another point guard. It's a point guard show in the second quarter of the All-Star game. There's Russell Westbrook again with a two-handed jam. Steve Nash outside at rare footage. Blake Griffin knocking down a three-pointer.
For Police Department, line is being recorded. Sean.
Hey, we've had some break-ins in my neighborhood, and there's a real suspicious guy. It's Retreat View Circle. The best address I can give you is 111 Retreat View Circle. This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something. It's raining, and he's just walking around looking about.
Okay, and this guy, is he white, black, or Hispanic?
He looks black. He's here now. He was just staring.
Oh, he's just walking around the area.
At all the houses. Something's wrong with him. Yeah. These assholes, they always get away. Shit, he's running.
He's running? Which way is he running?
Down towards the other entrance of the neighborhood.
Okay. Which entrance is that he's heading towards?
The back entrance.
Are you following him?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need you to do that.
So you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
All right, what is your phone number?
There's gunshots.
You just heard gunshots?
Yes.
How many?
There's one.
38, engine 38, stage for law enforcement. Law enforcement's en route by possible shooting. Someone laying in the grass.
Somebody here opened the door, and I said, help me, and they said, I'll call 911. I said, no, help me, I need help. And I don't know what they did, but that's when my jacket moved up, and I had my firearm on my right side hip. My jacket moved up, and he saw it. I feel like he saw it. He looked at it, and he said, you're gonna die tonight, mother. And he reached for it, but he reached, like I felt his arm going down to my side, and I grabbed it, and I just grabbed my firearm, and I shot him one time.
When I shifted, my jacket came up, and my shirt came up, and exposed my firearm. And that's when he said, he sat up and looked and said, you're gonna die tonight, mother. And I felt him take one hand off my mouth and slide it down my chest. And I just pinched his arm, and I grabbed my gun, and I aimed it at him and fired one shot. He kind of sat back and said, you got me.
No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace!
Their collective voice grows stronger with each chant.
You cannot defend yourself against a pack of Skittles and iced tea.
Tonight, the anger, frustration, and outrage over the shooting death of an unarmed Florida teen. It drew thousands to rally alongside the Reverend Al Sharpton.
So that the next time that they encounter someone else, they will think differently, they will look differently, and they will react differently in those situations. So the healing is our response to the infraction. So I want to encourage each of you all, you're still going to have to respond. Yes. You're still going to have to know how to respond. The healing in that situation was my husband, a police officer, then comes back with his brotherhood and begins to talk with the brotherhood, the fraternal order of police, about its practices. Begins to make inroads as to how we train our police officers. What is it that they're really trying to accomplish? The healing is to go back to Madison County, as he had to do, to go to their city hall and to talk to them about their experience, not in anger, but to say a change must happen. Somebody has to stand up and just say, I have suffered for the cause, but it needs to make a difference for the next person who may encounter the same thing. So I don't want us to paint a picture of naivety or utopia. This is a world that is full of very diverse people and diverse individuals. Part of our journey here is indeed the day-to-day process of learning how to accept one another. And it is a process. You did not come here knowing that. We are profiling those in both directions. It is just that when it is done by an individual of authority who has the power to create an imbalance, it's when we get to those particular situations where we can call it an injustice. But it is the very heart of it is when we look at people and we attach particular things to them based upon their outward appearance or the way they are carrying themselves. So the healing process, when you heal, it just means that you're wounded. That's all. But guess what? In this life, we're going to be wounded. The question is how we continually heal to move on beyond the wound that we've experienced.
My name is Ernest Deloach, and I'm very happy to be here with you this evening. I bring you greetings from young Deloach. And so what happened here not very long ago affects all of us, and so we are also happy to be here to talk a little bit about healing. I've been given the charge to speak to you about the gate not separating us. And the gate, I believe you were referring to, was the gated community. The concept of that thing that keeps in and at the same time keeps out. I want to talk a little bit about gates, but I want you to meditate on this for a moment. There are different types of gates. There are man-made gates, and there are mind-made gates. Now, thankfully, and something motivated me to go to law school, the rule of law has dismantled many of those man-made barriers, those man-made gates. There are no more segregated lunch counters. We don't see colored-only water fountains anymore. We don't see segregated train cars or buses. The man-made demarcations have pretty much been removed. But the mind-made gates are still there. We still, on Sunday mornings, are predominantly in our churches and temples and synagogues largely homogenous. We look the same. As Beverly Tatum's book said, reminds us, all the black kids still sit together in the cafeteria. The gate then is, I think, a metaphor, and I'm going to teach a little bit, Doctor, if I can. I'm going to teach a little bit. If I can't preach, I'm going to teach a little bit. The gate then has gone from being this physical barrier to this mental barrier. And it most looks like what Dr. Du Bois called in 1903's The Souls of Black Folk. He called it the veil. That's what they called it back then. He called it the veil. And what he meant, Du Bois, for a moment, for young people who don't know, Du Bois was the first African-American to earn a PhD at Harvard. So put that in your back pocket. That'll come in handy at some point. More than 100 years later, his imagery still holds true. Why did Du Bois call it the veil? There were three reasons he called it the veil. One, he said, because there's a misunderstanding and separation between blacks and whites. And so the veil is that thing that denotes that separation. But why do you use the veil? You could use the gate, you could use the fence, you could use the barrier. Why do you use the veil? I'm glad you asked. Well, he used the veil because he said even though it exists to separate, it's translucent. We can see each other through it, and yet are still separate. Why else the veil? The third reason he used the veil is because it can be lifted. And that's what we want to talk a little bit about. It was Booker T. Washington who, in his immortal statue at Tuskegee, is seen to be lifting the veil of ignorance. We need to do some veil lifting, family. We need to do some veil lifting, some mind-made veil lifting. In Du Bois's day, in Washington's day, that veil was bigotry. It was segregation. It was Jim Crow. For us, it's classism. It's economic disparity. It's gender bias. It's discrimination on the basis of orientation. It is stereotyping, which goes both ways. So what do we do? What can we look forward to get past our mind-made gates? We've got to acknowledge the importance and the power of generational change and leadership. Everyone loves of older folk to mentor young people. We don't want to let them go, let them live. We don't want to let them take us where we need to go. We don't acknowledge that there are things that they have in their youth. There's less weight, there's less burden that they carry that allows them to fly a little higher. We've got to acknowledge that. Don't take my word, I'll give you 3 examples as to how that's been proven. Look at the outpouring of love and support after Trayvon's death. Yes, there were many in the old guard, many in the older generation, many of our wise elders who did their part and continue to do their part. But the power of communication was in the youth. It was the young people leaving classes to sit in. It was the young people holding vigils. It was the young people that were putting together internet protests. I don't even know how to do that. I don't know how to find an internet petition. It was the young people spreading the word by way of Facebook and Twitter. And not just them. As the pastor said, healing has to go beyond Sanford. It's worldwide.
Everyone here tonight has their own unique purpose and reason for being here. But if we can connect and find the synergy of solving problems holistically, our collective movement forward will also hasten our personal growth. The program tonight emerges largely from the faith community, and it's through our faith that we're called to show forgiveness, pursue justice, and compassionately help those who cannot help themselves. I was very moved tonight listening to the stories of profiling, and it took me back almost 40 years when I was a college student going on a drive with one of my roommates, a good friend, to go visit another friend. And it was one of those rare occasions when I was not going over the speed limit, and I got pulled over by a state trooper. And I was kind of surprised, because this time I didn't think I had it coming. And the trooper didn't come up to my window. The trooper went over to my passenger window and had all the conversation with my friend. And in fact, when he was done talking with him, we were free to leave. And I looked at my friend and I said, "What was that all about?" And he said, "Now you know what it's like to be a young black man in America." And that made a huge impression on me that I never lost sight of in my now 35 years as a police officer. One of the many hats that police wear that we don't acknowledge enough is the role of being humanitarians. It's just as important for the police to show humanity as it is for us to show respect, integrity, and all of those things must overshadow any show of authority. To truly bring to life our role as peace officers, that's the statutory definition of the police, peace officers, requires a genuine partnership with the community. For that partnership to grow and be sustained, we have to build a relationship of trust. So I call on everyone here tonight that we all work tirelessly to bring about the healing and relationship building so needed here in Sanford. The real tragedy would be for us to miss the chance to honor a young life cut short, honor him by creating a lasting and sustainable relationship of trust. Thank you.
I've lived in Sanford for over 14 years at this point. And I moved here from Orlando. I lived in Orlando for about 15 years prior to moving here. Okay. So I know the area relatively well at this time.
Do you like living in Sanford?
Basically, more or less. There are some pros and cons. Among the pros, it's a small town and it has an attractive downtown where we are seated at this moment. The cons is that I think it has some problems that help lend itself to the situation we're talking about here with regard to the shooting of Trayvon Martin and so forth. I saw something about it somewhere in the media not long at all after it happened, somewhere probably right at the end of February of this year. But it was just another random item that kind of filtered through my consciousness. We live in a day and time of senseless acts of violence, and I sort of just chalked it up in that category at that time, and I didn't pay it really any more mind. Then, probably about a week later, and I'm going to say it would have been probably right around the 8th of March, I was driving through downtown Sanford, and I saw several local media trucks parked outside of Sanford City Hall. And because I have some civic interest, I stopped and asked one of the crew members what was up, and he said that there was going to be some sort of a statement by city officials having to do with the shooting of a young African American man in Sanford. And so that was the first time that the event really caught my attention, and I said, well, this, I made a mental note. I said to myself, this is obviously something that merits further attention. So from that point on, I started really taking notice, and events started to move fairly rapidly. After that, I believe there was maybe a larger press conference on the 15th of March, again about a week later from the smaller event that I saw, and then much larger events started to unfold in the latter part of March.
And there was a protest demonstration on March 22nd. Did you attend that?
Yes, I did. I think you're talking about the large protest that was held in Fort Mellon Park, and the crowd estimates ranged somewhere around 8,000 people, and yes, I was most definitely there for that one.
Why? Why did you go to the demonstration?
Well, I went to this demonstration in part because I knew about it. I knew that it was happening, and I was pretty well aware of the circumstances or what the issues were by that point in time. And I wanted to lend my support, so I went with my wife and with a personal friend of ours, both of whom are white. We were among, I would say, a fairly small number of white people in the crowd that day. I would say out of about the estimated 8,000 people that were there, certainly fewer than 100 were white. And I also understood that the parents of Trayvon Martin would be speaking, would be on the stage, and the city did set up an informal stage in Fort Mellon Park for this event, or they allowed that to be set up. Also, I understood that the Reverend Al Sharpton would be there. The president of the NAACP, Ben Jealous, would be among the speakers. When we arrived, and as the event unfolded, I was surprised to learn, I'm pleasantly surprised, that other speakers included Dick Gregory and Martin Luther King III. I hadn't known that they were going to be on hand. Also, I suppose I shouldn't neglect mentioning Sanford Mayor Jeff Triplett, who ironically was somewhat booed at the outset. Then he was called back on stage by Representative Corrine Brown, who has been an advocate for justice in this situation since the outset, and she called Mayor Triplett back on stage to inform the crowd that this man had been involved with the issue and had taken some pains to see that something positive was done in the aftermath of the shooting. In other words, he was hands-on and concerned and involved, and she told the crowd he didn't deserve to be booed. So I thought that was a positive and encouraging thing for her to do. And the crowd, I think, was very receptive to that message.
Now, you said that you were there and your wife was there and some friends were there, but you were aware that you were one of the few white people.
That's correct.
Most of the people were African American.
Yes.
Why did you want to go to this?
Well, I basically saw just a fundamental injustice had been done. That when I fully became aware of this case, that here was a young man who had lost his life, and to that extent, his race or ethnic identity didn't really matter. And I was shocked and appalled to learn that the man that had shot him had used this stand your ground defense that's on Florida's law books and had basically been allowed to walk away with no arrest. And it seemed to me all the way from the outset that if anybody had a right to a stand your ground claim, it might have been Trayvon Martin, because all the evidence seemed to suggest that George Zimmerman, who was a man not known to Trayvon Martin, had been following him for some while in a vehicle, and Trayvon Martin apparently was aware of that fact, and that at some point, according to the dispatch tape, that Zimmerman had exited the vehicle and had pursued Trayvon Martin on foot. So Trayvon Martin, not knowing who this strange man was, who the record since then has shown outweighed him by a good number of pounds, and who can possibly be said has something of a frightening demeanor, even if Trayvon Martin struck him or something like that, it can be argued he did that in self-defense. So to me, it was inconceivable that George Zimmerman was not arrested in the face of these sorts of circumstances, at least not held for some sort of a hearing where the matter could be disposed of in a proper manner, not simply just be turned loose at the discretion of the police on the spot. It was the way it had looked. So I believe that the parents of Trayvon Martin were firmly justified in their call for some sort of recourse. They had no recourse. They lost their 17-year-old son through no real fault of his own, walking back to some place where he was supposed to be, armed only with a can of iced tea and a bag of candy, and he winds up dead on the ground. There need to be some serious questions asked about that, and it's outrageous. The parents were outraged, the local African American community was outraged, and many other people around this country and around the world were also outraged by this set of events.